So I found this guy on Instagram who creates amazing videos and really got inspired by his works. So I really want to try to create one for myself. So I tried to replicate the same exact thing. But the result I'm getting from my video was not clean as he did. But I really enjoyed the process of making this video, and today I'm gonna share with you and I'm gonna break down how I created and how these types of videos are created in After Effects. Let's get started. So first of all, shoot the video using your phone without the subject, and I'm using a camera in this case. Now place the subject on the table and grab it. A very important thing to remember is that the movement of your hand should roughly be the same with and without the subject, so that the transition between two shots look seamless. Import the footage inside After Effects and drag this footage inside this new composition icon. Trim the footage just before you grab the subject, and then scrub through the timeline and trim the footage just after you grab the camera. Control Shift and D to do that, and delete the middle clip, and we're gonna stitch both of these clips together. Now export a still frame of this camera. Alright, go to Photoshop and remove the background. And I have these two other stock images which I downloaded, and I removed the background as well for both these stock images. Go back to After Effects and we're gonna track the camera of the first clip. Select the first clip and track camera. Once you're done tracking, you can go and find a ground plane, which is this. Select this, right click and set ground plane in origin, and right click again and create solid and camera. Once you have the tracking information, it's time to import the image, which is a PSD file. Drag and drop it inside this, and we're gonna drag it inside the timeline, and make sure you turn this at 3D layer. Hit F4 if you don't see that 3D switch. It's gonna look weird, but don't worry, we're gonna fix that in a second. So copy the position of the solid and paste it on the camera. Now you can adjust the rotation, the scale, and the position again. Right click on the layer, time, and freeze frame. Now look at your hand gesture and time the opacity animation according to that, from 0 to 100, just like this. Select the solid layer and duplicate this by Control D and rename the shadow. I'm gonna change the color of the solid to black and turn this visibility on, and if you see here, it intersects with the camera, so I will adjust the position of the camera, and I'm gonna scale the size of the solid. Select the ellipse tool, selecting on the solid layer, draw an ellipse just below the camera, and hit F to feather up the mask. Increase the feather so that it looks like a shadow. Now pick whip and parent the shadow to the camera layer. Also, we're going to animate the opacity of the shadow just like the camera. P on the keyboard to bring up the position and set a keyframe and match the hand gesture with the position animation just like this. Select all the keyframes, F9 for easy ease, go to the graph and make the graph something like this. Also animate the opacity from 100 to 0 so that the camera disappears. And we're gonna do the same for the shadow layer as well. So you'll repeat the same exact thing for the other two cameras, but make sure the size of the final camera matches the size of the camera on this clip, because that's very important. We're creating a seamless transition here. So for the final camera, I added a position animation. So I match the hand gesture again so that it's kind of floating and jumping in the air like this, and when it comes back down, I'm going to grab that camera. Okay, select all the keyframes and make sure your graph is something like this so that you have a smooth animation. And as you can see here, my hand is just behind the camera, so we're gonna fix that by doing some rotoscoping. So go to the footage, duplicate this and move it above the camera layer, and go to the effects and controls, delete the 3D tracker, turn off that visibility off, trim that there and move few frames forward, and I'm gonna trim that, and I'm going to rotoscope that part out. So turn back on, double click it and select this roto brush tool, and we're gonna paint the roto brush tool on the hand. So once you paint that, you can hold down Alt and delete the unwanted parts. And if you go to the effects and presets for the roto brush tool, just change this quality from standard to best and scroll down and enable this motion blur, and you're gonna rotoscope it frame by frame. And once it's done, your hand should be on top of the camera. To make things more realistic, I'm going to animate the shadow of the camera while it's floating in the air. So when it jumps up, I'm going to animate the shadow. So hit MM for the mask, and I'm going to animate the mask path of this. So select this and set a mask keyframe, and when the camera moves up, I'm going to scale that mask down, and when it comes back down, I'm going to copy the first keyframe and I'm going to paste it on that position. So for this lasso tool selection, I use a shape layer, which is a stroke and a fill, and I added a stroke and a fill like this, and I animate the stroke and I also animate a fill. It's very simple animation. So to have our hand on top of the shape layer, we need to duplicate this and move it up above all layers, and we need to rotoscope this like we did earlier so that we can place the hand on top of this shape layer and the keyboard as well. Alright, so regarding the keyboard was a screen recording of my phone. Import it inside the composition just like we did for the other elements, making this a 3D layer and placing that in the right position in that 3D space. I also added this blending mode to screen, and go to the effects and presets and search for glow, and I added a glow effect. And for this After Effects and Apple Vision Pro logo, just drag and drop and import this just like we did for the rest of the image. I just added a scale animation, as you can see here. That's it. So finally, I added an adjustment layer and I added an optics compensation to that, and check this reverse lens distortion, and I added some lens distortion whenever there are hand gestures in my hand. And as you can see here, whenever I swipe in a new camera, I added some distortion just simply using keyframes like this. So that is how I ended up creating this effect. If you haven't watched this video, go and watch it. This is Motion Designer, and I will see you in my next video. Take care.